Gospel reading is from John chapter 6, verses 16 through 69, and Mark chapter 14, to include a whole bunch of verses strewn out the entire chapter. Well, Mack just told me this is the longest reading he's ever signed to a reader.
Just for you, Jim.
Thank you, Mack. I thought we were friends, but
I want to do that for my friends.
oh, I really do appreciate it. When many of his disciples heard it, they said, "This teaching is difficult. Who can accept it?" But Jesus, being aware that his disciples were complaining about it, said to them, "Does this offend you? Then what if you were to see the Son of Man ascending to where he was before? It is the Spirit that gives life. The flesh is useless. The words that I have spoken to you are spirit and life. But among you there are some who do not believe." For Jesus knew from the first who were the ones that did not believe, and who was the one that would betray him. And he said, "For this reason I have told you that no one can come to me unless it is granted by the Father." Because of this, many of his disciples turned back and no longer went with him. So Jesus asked the 12, "Do you also wish to go away?" Simon Peter answered him, "Lord, to whom can we go? You have the words of eternal life. We have come to believe and know that you are the Holy One of God." Jesus answered him, "I did not choose you, the 12. Did I not choose you, the 12? Yet one of you is a devil." He was speaking of Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, for he, the one of the 12, was going to betray him. They went to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I pray." He took with him Peter, James, and John, and began to be distressed and agitated, and said to them, "I am deeply grieved, even to death. Remain here and keep awake." He said, "Abba, Father, for you all things are possible. Remove this cup from me. Yet not what I want, but what you want." He came and found them sleeping, and he said to Peter, "Simon, are you asleep? Could you not keep awake 1 hour?" And again he went away and prayed, saying the same words. And once more he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were very heavy, and they did not know what to say to him. He came the third time and said, "Are you still sleeping, taking your rest? Enough! The hour has come. The Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand." Immediately, while they were still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived with him. There was a crowd with swords and gloves from the chief priest, the scribes, and the elders. Now the betrayer had given them the sign, saying, "The one I will kiss is the man. Arrest him and lead him away under guard." So when Jesus came, he went up to him at once, said, "Rabbi," and kissed him. They laid hands on him and arrested him. A certain man was following him, wearing nothing but a linen cloth. They got hold of him, but he left the linen cloth and ran off naked. While Peter was below in the courtyard, one of the servant girls of the high priest came by. When she saw Peter warming himself, she stared at him and said, "You were with Jesus, the man from Nazareth." But he began to curse and swore an oath, "I do not know this man you are talking about." At that moment, the cock crowed for the second time. Then Peter remembered that Jesus had said to him, "Before the cock crows twice, you will deny me 3 times." And he broke down and wept. The word of the Lord.
In reading the Gospels about the final weeks of Christ's ministry, as I read them, the word unravel came to my mind. And so I looked that word up in the dictionary. And I was struck immediately by the three contextual definitions provided for the verb unravel, realizing that each one can be applied to Christ's relationship with his believers in the final days of his messianic journey. The first contextual definition of unravel read as follows: if something such as a plan or system unravels, it breaks up or begins to fail. In the Gospel of John, those who believe in Christ and follow him are defined by two words as translated from the Greek: disciples and apostles. We know that the term apostles was used exclusively for the 12, the ones whom Jesus chose to carry his word beyond the fulfillment of his mission. The other words is disciples. And the way that word has been used in the New Testament is a little less clear to us. Unlike the apostles, the disciples could consist of any number who believed in or followed Jesus at any particular time in his ministry. Although most scholars agree that that number was probably never more than about 100 people at the most that actually went with him, that actually followed or committed themselves to following him. In the Gospel of John, it is this group of believers who first begin to unravel themselves from Christ in response to one of his most confusing, baffling teachings. Very truly I tell you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you. Those who eat my flesh and drink my blood have eternal life, and I will raise them up on the last day. For my flesh is true food, and my blood is true drink. Those who eat my flesh and drink my blood abide in me, and I in them. Then John follows his teaching with this: when many of his disciples heard it, they said, "This teaching is difficult. Who can accept it?" Because of this, many of his disciples turned back and no longer went about with him. You and I have the luxury of understanding the words of Christ. But imagine, just imagine, how this must have sounded to the ears of those who had yet to experience the Lord's Supper. I'm sure some disciples assumed that Jesus was using a parable. But perhaps others thought that he was following the model of the insane religious fanatic, of which there were many in that culture. In fact, Jesus responded by explaining to them that the words he gave are spirit and life. But according to John, that really didn't matter. Regardless of how they heard his words, it is clear that they were offended or at a minimum disappointed by Christ's teaching, because John tells us that all except the apostles, who were also called disciples, all of them disowned him. They walked away. John shows us Jesus' reaction to his disciples' desertion, and his question to the apostles as the disciples leave is filled with pain and pathos. So Jesus asked the 12, "Do you also wish to go away?" Simon Peter answered him, "Lord, to whom can we go? You have the words of eternal life. We have come to believe and know that you are the Holy One of God. In the other Gospels, in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, a turning point occurs when Peter makes his confession that Christ is the Son of God. And in response to that confession, Christ reveals to them then the suffering and the death the Messiah must accomplish. But John is different. He always is. In John, Peter's confession focuses more on the irony of Christ's dearest believer, Christ's dearest friend, who proclaims that while others may abandon him, they who are his chosen literally have nowhere else to go. Statement of faith. A moving statement of faith. And clearly, Jesus is moved by it. Did I not choose you, the 12? But then Jesus hints that the unraveling of those who love and believe in him is not yet over, in spite of Peter's bold claim. Jesus says, yet one of you is the devil. It is in Mark's gospel, that we see the devil's work against the Messiah reach its climax. A climax which, by the way, agrees with the second contextual meaning of unravel. Quote, if you unravel something that is knotted, woven, or knitted, it becomes one straight piece again, or scatters into its different threads. Immediately after the Passover meal, in the upper room, when Jesus reveals the meaning of those words, his body and his blood, that had previously driven the other disciples away, that love that has knitted the 12 apostles to Jesus begins to unravel as Judas fulfills Christ's prophecy and breaks from the group, one of the 12, in order to betray him to the temple leadership. Jesus then leads the remaining apostles, the 11, into the Garden of Gethsemane and makes two very simple requests. To 8 of the apostles, he asks them to wait while he prays. To 3 of his longest, closest, and most trusted believers, Peter, James, and John, he asked them to keep watch for him. In Presbyterian pastor Scott Saul's book titled Irresistible Faith, Saul talks about blind spots that distract us from being the kind of Christian that Christ wants us to be. And in his words, I hear the echoes of Gethsemane. Listen, it is our inclination to replace Jesus' call to deny ourselves, to take up our crosses and follow him. We replace his call with a self-serving path in which we deny our neighbors, take up our comforts, and follow our dreams. Peter, James, and John, like many of the apostles and the disciples, found their messianic dream in Jesus of Nazareth. It was a dream of their traditional religion, which promised a Messiah who would conquer and reign over the earth and all other nations. Now, think about this. Imagine this scene as they watch Jesus pray in the garden. Their dream of messianic glory shatters. Peter, James, and John have seen Christ forsaken by his church, his community, his own family, and now the other believers. Their self-serving path to share in a glorious new messianic age upon the earth has hit a dead end in a dangerous, dreary, and darkened landscape. and they hear their teacher weep and pray to the Father for help. That was not expected of the Messiah. It is then that the tapestry of love that had knit Jesus to his three most faithful believers unravels. He came and found them sleeping, and he said to Peter, "Simon, are you asleep? Could you not keep awake 1 hour?" He came a third time to them. "Are you still," a second time, "are you still sleeping and taking your rest?" He came, sleeping and taking rest. Enough. The hour has come. The Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. As you heard, the first two definitions of the verb unravel fit quite well into the sad journey that now has reached its final hours. But in the third contextual definition of the verb, in that definition that I looked up, there is a change, which gives Jesus' unraveled life an unexpected and a new meaning. Listen to that definition. If you unravel a mystery or puzzle, it gradually becomes clearer, and you can work out the answer to it. That final unraveling, the unraveling that reveals a mystery, takes place in a courtyard where one final piece fights to remain knitted to Christ's love. While Peter was below in the courtyard, one of the servant girls of the high priest came by. When she saw Peter warming himself, she stared at him and said, "You also were with Jesus, the man from Nazareth." But he began to curse and swore an oath. "I do not know this man you are talking about." At that moment, the cock crowed for the second time. Then Peter remembered, and he broke down and wept. Peter's failure and his acknowledgement of it began to reveal at last the mystery of the life of Jesus of Nazareth. Peter wanted to fight for his Jesus, the Messiah of the Jewish nation, just like he thought he was expected to do. Peter wanted to be the first of many religious warriors to shed blood, to begin a brutal journey toward a worldly throne. But Jesus was not Peter's Messiah. He was God's Messiah. And the only blood to be shed would be his own. Not as an act of war, but as an act of love. An act that would unravel the mystery of God and reveal what no human had ever expected or even dared to believe. A God who loves us. And a God who expects those who believe in him to love others. That was unimaginable until Jesus went to the cross. Thomas Merton wrote, and as I read these words, I thought about Peter's almost natural response to fighting for Jesus. Merton wrote, "Merely to resist evil with evil by hating those who hate us and seeking to destroy them is actually no resistance at all. It leads in practice to a denial of Christ and to the service of hatred rather than love." Merton's words express clearly why, in the end, Jesus was forsaken by his believers. Because they did not know what yet to believe. They did not know yet what to believe. That would only come when the final piece of Jesus' life would unravel, not on the darkest of nights in a garden, but on the darkest of days, when the Son of God would go alone to the cross. Peter, with all of his good intentions, could not make that journey with the Messiah, and neither can we. But Peter received from the Messiah's lonely journey, received what the Messiah that he needed. And the Messiah that we need, giving him and us something wonderful, a love and a life that can never, ever be unraveled. That never goes away. We'll finish next week.